Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whenever you're able to tune in to this episode of Conversations. Today is a hidden conversation episode, and I am absolutely delighted to be joined by somebody who is very close to Apa's heart, who is going to be sharing with us some of the impacts of steroid use, of body dysmorphia, of eating disorders. So this is a really heavy topic, but our guest today is going to give this information so that we can all understand more, and hopefully we can all impact on how we work with people that experience these environments. So without further ado, please let me welcome Candi Armstrong. Candi, good morning, good afternoon. It has just switched over for us. How are you?
Yeah, I'm well, thank you, Dave.
Cool. I'm really glad that we've been able to get this conversation organized, because this is a really big topic for a lot of people that goes pretty much undiscussed. And you know, for for those that haven't seen you, haven't met you online, haven't experienced your story, give us a bit of a snapshot of what you've been through.
Okay, well, you maybe would have seen me or heard me. I did some interviews with Jodie Marsh and with Craig Williams. I used to be a bodybuilder. I used to take steroids. I wasn't a competitive bodybuilder, but I kind of was impressed a little bit as kind of a poster girl for what happens if you take steroids, so good or bad or whatever you want to take from that. But I currently am the page manager for Asper. I don't know if people know on Facebook and Instagram. I used to do a lot of the creative work on the side. So
You've had a really kind of roller coaster journey to where you are now, um, and that started fairly young for you, didn't it?
yeah, it is.
So if we can kind of roll the clock back and kind of look at that journey in its chunks. Um, in fact, before we go there, the term steroid is extremely emotive to a lot of people, and competitive. As you pointed out, you were not involved in competitive bodybuilding, weightlifting. This was simply your own personal journey. Um, and by way of transparency, my experience with the arena of steroids was from a competitive athletics arena where it was very controlled. I was competing at national and club level, in athletics, and the idea of the anti-doping testing at the end of races was something that I lived with for quite a while. So we both have very different opening introductions to the term steroid and what they are and what they do,
Yeah,
and why we might, or why somebody might feel the need to use. But
yeah.
we'll come to that in a bit more detail later. But going back to the beginning of your journey, the the kind of start of this wasn't steroids. That was not the first kind of
No,
start for this journey, was it?
no, it wasn't.
So give us a bit of an idea of what was that environment like for you that started this off.
Okay, well, what started it off was I was very self-conscious teenager. I was being bullied in school, and I really, really just wanted to lose weight off my legs, off my hips, because all the popular girls are all skinny, and I just wanted to get skinny legs really, and so I started dieting. I started looking at all the diet magazines, and I started counting calories, started restricting, cutting out fat, cutting out certain nutrients, and pretty soon that landed me in an eating disorder unit. I was weighing under 5 stone, and I was diagnosed with anorexia at age 15.
Okay.
But at the time, I didn't connect to the anorexia diagnosis at all. I think the mental health people were there, but they weren't able to reach me. I didn't see myself as anorexic because my legs weren't skinny enough to be anorexic at all. When I looked at myself, I don't have these tiny, mini little ankle bones. And I thought that these people that were forcing me to eat were just like picking on me. I thought, well, why they, and I see girls with much skinnier legs, but that were just their natural body type. And I think, she's skinnier than me. Why are they not calling her anorexic? Why are they not sending her to hospital? And I was so frustrated, and I just wanted to get out of there. And I did get out of there. And people were saying, oh, she's going to lose weight again. She'll end up back in here. None of her attitudes change. And I was like, no, Sam, I'm not. But I'm not going to do what you want either. And I really thought that I could buck the system. I really thought, because I started reading all the diet magazines and the bodybuilding magazines, the fitness magazines. I thought that I could build loads and loads of muscle on my upper body, on everywhere else apart from my legs and my hips. And then if I just trained my upper body and I ate healthily, ate the protein and stuff, and I didn't work on my lower body at all, then I was going to lose all the fat, which was naturally stored on my lower body, because muscle burns fat, muscle burns calories by being there. And I'd put on loads of weight because muscle weighs more than fat, so that'd keep me out of the hospital, but it would be in the right places. And all I just wanted to do was build the biggest upper body possible. But
and ultimately, all of the information and all of the external enforcement that you were being given was contrary to what was actually needed for you, because it was reinforcing your own concept, your own control mechanism that you could do this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to kowtow and be told by an establishment that all I needed to do was get to a certain weight to be healthy and happy, when the minute I'm like half a pound over that weight, everyone's telling me I'm fat and I need to lose weight. That's the way the world works. And to me, it was like I just needed more control of my body shape and structure. And I believed I could achieve it.
Do you think at any point in that understanding of how the body works, how body structure is formed, how the body controls fat balancing, all of those things, do you think you were ever given accurate information about how that side of things worked?
No, I don't think I was, but I don't think I was really listening to a lot of people. I was only doing my own research. And if somebody told me you can't and that's not possible, I took that as a challenge. When a doctor told me that I couldn't be a size 6 on the bottom and a size 16 on the top, I took it as a challenge to prove them wrong. I didn't take it as okay, the doctor's saying that might be fact. I was like, I'll show you. So I had a lot of determination, and if it had been used in something a lot more positive, like what you were doing, like competitive sport or something, but it wasn't. It was used ultimately in something quite destructive.
Yeah, and that information becomes delivered in one dimension, and you're already bucking against that. It doesn't seem to me as a coach, it doesn't seem that the system was able to give you a different dimensional view other than that one dimension that you were already going, no, that's that just challenges me, rather than going, let's look at the breakdown of how the body forms natural fat, how the body processes sugars, giving you knowledge that you could then understand that actually this idea of a triangular human being is not something that is either going to be effective, or just because you want muscle to form in a particular place, that's going to happen for your body's natural kind of levels. So you get the diagnosis of anorexia. You go through institutionalized hospitalization, you go through all of that negative reinforcement that is coming from family, from the circle around you.
Yeah.
And the magazines that you're reading, everything else. Yeah, I don't want to get into the conversation around whether the magazines are right, wrong, or indifferent, but it was having an impact on you in the way that it was impacting on you.
Very much so. I mean, society's idea of beauty is very thin, and at the time as well, when I was growing up, I mean, now I think they like bums again, and they didn't like bums when I was younger. It was no bum at all. It was straight boobs, it was very skinny legs. That's what was the standard of beauty.
Yeah. And the work that's been done around anorexia awareness and eating disorder awarenesses has taken that kind of challenge to the media and to those magazines in a way that hadn't really been done when you were experiencing what you were going through.
Very much so, and I think a lot of the time social media has had quite a positive effect in challenging this. Well, there wasn't any social media when I was 15, but what I do see on social media is girls are actually forming support networks and forming a backlash, and the ordinary people have got more of a voice than they've ever had before. So although we talk about a lot of negative impacts of social media, and I'm not blind to it just because I'm a social media manager, I'm not saying social media is all good, but I do see that there have been a lot of positive developments in that field today.
Yeah, and it's worth pointing out that, you know, in our very first episode of Hidden Conversations, we were joined by Bernie Wright, who's connected to the National Centre for Eating Disorders, and it's really worth kind of taking a look at that conversation as well if anybody's interested.
I did actually get the opportunity to speak to her once, and I must say I've got the greatest respect for Bernie Wright. She's the first professional that totally, I mean, I didn't speak to her anything other than as a colleague throughout it, but when I sort of told her my story, she understood so much and with such depth, and she never questioned, she never asked me all the usual questions that everybody else seems to ask about, was I transgender? She totally understood, and so I just think she's, just a shout out to her as well. I think she's really amazing what she does.
Yeah, and Bernie is someone that APA is hugely impressed by, and part of the reason why we have created the specialization images for those professionals that work with nutrition, nutrition, weight, shape, and size, because it's not just one of those elements, is it? That is
important. No, so much, because a lot of the time, Dave, I'm not. When I look at me now, I'm a normal weight. I may be a few pounds over or something, but I don't. I'm not anorexic and I'm not bariatric. So, but I do have body dysmorphia. I have a massive issue with my body shape. I will not have a relationship because of my body. I am stifled in a lot of ways because of my body. It's affected my life immensely, but it's not just like if you look at me, you set me on the scale, you know, to even go to lunch with me and you'll see I eat a normal meal. You think, okay, I didn't make myself sick afterwards, okay, so haven't got an eating disorder. But when you look at the broader spectrum, you know,
it's a component part of your life. And eating disorders tend to be something that are kind of, whether you come to a management level of that eating disorder, it's always something that's in your mind and it requires a huge amount of support. in order to, one, get to that management point where your control over your environment, your body is yours.
Yeah.
And a lot of people around you have to kind of understand that that control is yours.
Mm.
And that's a massive factor as well, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And I think it's still, oh, the triggers are there all the time. They're just going off, they're just flashing like, you know, everywhere I go, I'm looking at everybody's ankles, everybody's calves, everybody's weight and shape, comparing myself constantly. I sometimes measure parts of my body like numerous times every single day. You know, it's definitely taken me to a place, a very dark place, multiple times in my life where it's gone beyond dieting. It's been about ending my life. It's been about not being here.
Yeah.
That's
so
the effect it has. But
okay, so looking at the kind of the body dysmorphia,
yeah,
we know that with eating disorders, it's the support system that makes sure that when those triggers are going off for you, you are still able to stay in control, that it's not the triggers that take over, and that support network has to be very, very conscious of its inputs for you.
I think I've really struggled to find any support network that's been able to understand that.
Yeah. And that's the key factor, isn't it? Success comes from those support networks as much as it comes from the resilience of the individual. But even now, and in a healthier place with an effective support system around you, you're still carrying that body dysmorphia. And you mentioned that the the environment where you are measuring yourself against everybody else and you're checking all of that out. But the question of whether you are transgender, that's a really frightening situation for anybody to be in, whether they are or not, to be questioned about that.
It's very frightening because what happens is when I was taking anabolic steroids, I started to grow facial hair. I mean, the amount of time I spent shaving, sucking, electrolysis, everything I tried. I also lost my hair on my head. So this is a wig, and well, it's really painful actually because these are things I really didn't want to happen, but they did happen through taking steroids. And at the time, I thought it was worth the sacrifice. But also, my body became masculine, which it isn't now. But my voice became deeper, and everybody was looking at me. And if they knew my previous, they knew like me before that I was a girl. Then they thought that I was transgender and I was transitioning to become a man. So this is all the mental health. And people in the street would see me and presume that I was a man trying to transition to be a woman, and not very successfully. And I get a lot of transphobic abuse and transphobic hate. And all of this being projected onto you, and you're like, people won't listen when you say, no, this has nothing to do with gender. I say gender isn't the agenda. But, you know, hello.
Gender isn't the agenda. I like that. But it just shows the sheer lack of understanding around the impacts of steroids.
It does, yeah.
So let's look at that for a second, because as I said, my exposure to the arena of steroids was an anti-doping arena. You know, I would go to a race at a weekend during sprint season, and I knew that there was a chance I was going to be tested. So, you know, I ran for a club who had a zero tolerance on this, and when one of our club members was found guilty of taking steroids, the club went absolutely schizoid in the sense of, this is not what this club is about. This is not what because the sheer understanding of what steroids could do to the human body was a lot higher than is generally known. So
Yeah.
when you started looking at steroids, what was your understanding of the impacts?
Well, basically, I realised that male hormones were why men can build more upper body muscle than women, and that I found that if you block the estrogen, you don't feel the fat on the hips, you don't get the cellulite. So I was like, whoa, I want these, you know, and I knew you could grow facial hair, but you get, you know, on paper something, as opposed to actually knowing. But I thought, okay, well, I can shave that off. It's better than having periods. It's better than having cellulite. It's better than all these horrible things that came to puberty that I did not want. The hair loss came later, and by the time the hair loss actually started to come, I was far too involved in the bodybuilding.
Do you think there's an adrenaline drive when you're succeeding in the bodybuilding, you're finding that body shape starting to form, that
Oh, definitely.
adrenaline kind of success?
Oh, so much so.
This is,
You live for the game.
okay, and this is where I think a lot of people kind of, they look at what they're told about the impacts that can happen, and they tell themselves, well, they can and they cannot. They might happen, they might not.
Yeah.
And we always urge on the side of it won't happen to me.
Oh, totally.
And when we're caught in that cycle, it's very hard to get off of it, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it took for me to be told that if I didn't stop, my kidneys were going to fail. After some blood tests, after I was in a lot of pain, I was urinating like 50, 60 times a day. And this was in the first lockdown. I thought I had bladder cancer. I didn't know what was going on. And this was, you know, it was found within blood tests. I'd also developed arthritis in some of my joints, my elbows, my knees. I wasn't able to train like I busted a ligament in my shoulder through excessive training and just not resting. I mean, I always trained with fairly good form, but it was every single session pushing myself. I want to go heavier. I want to train every day of my life. I never want to rest because I never get a rest from walking. So why should I ever give my body a rest if my legs don't get a rest?
And it's that kind of addiction to the work that is driven by that goal that is ultimately misformed. That goal of that triangular.
Yeah.
If the knowledge had been accurate that this was this is the image you do not need. This is the image that can kill you.
Yeah.
This is the image that will shut your systems down. And kidney failure is one of the biggest kind of control factors in all of those hormone I don't want to call it realignment, but in turning off the estrogen, your body has to do something to create that, and that has an impact on the body's function.
Right.
So that kind of negative reinforcement that you were getting right at the beginning, that kind of set this path, that didn't tap into your own psychology at the beginning and didn't nurture your own psychology in a positive way, kind of kick that ball rolling.
Yeah.
You said that the kind of notification, the real kind of crutch of, oh my God, how bad this is, came last year.
Yeah.
Do you think the fact that we were in a situation where you weren't able to work out, that you weren't able to hit the gym, hit the pool, to do that exercise, Was a factor too?
I did have a lot of weights at home. I'm going to show you. There you can see, but that's my upper body ergometer that I set up in the living room. Did you see that on there?
Yep.
Yeah. So I did actually make provisions for myself to exercise during the lockdown. I really did think that, you know, I'd be able to make some good gains and smash it and carry on. And I didn't know this was coming. And stronger place through, sorry, moving the computer around. So, that's where it was. I was just in a bit of a stronger place, maybe through the friends that I'd made in gyms. I gained a little bit more self-worth through being 35 than being 15, 16, you know, but it's not, it's still a big part of me, but I think there is a little part of me that is taking on, you know, some of the social media, body positivity, just a lot of work I've been doing predominantly on myself, and a few good friends that I've got with me. But, you know, I still think the world, there's a lot of things that people don't realise they're doing that are really messing women up about their body image. I mean, the media is one thing, you know, oh, if somebody's got cellulite or they've got cankles, a rich celebrity, and everyone thinks it's really fun to tear them down and trash it. And it's like, well, maybe it's not affecting that celebrity that much. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Maybe they think, well, I've got loads of money, I'm doing okay. Maybe they get a personal trainer, get surgery. Maybe they don't. Maybe they're confident. But it's the hundreds of thousands, millions of other women that are reading that who've got the same body type that are not saying, okay, well, we think Cheryl Cole's got this or whatever. We're thinking, or Kim Kardashian, they're thinking, I've got that. That makes me unattractive. And it's the same when you're a young girl and you're growing up and your mother may tell you that you're absolutely beautiful. But if they're saying, oh, Debbie down the road's got a big bum. Oh, look at Hayley, she's got chunky legs. Good job you're not like her. You know, oh, your auntie, she's got no boobs. I've got the boobs. And they're saying this while the child's growing up, not knowing what body shape their daughter is going to develop. And that all this running and also just basing so much of a woman's value on her weight and her appearance. And this is the society we're in. And I think that unless somewhere along the way that changes, there's always going to be people with body dysmorphia. There's always going to be people with eating disorders, and people taking risks, having risky surgery, taking steroids, taking growth hormones, slimming pills, everything else.
And this is the thing that, you know, within the psychological arena, it's almost a given. We understand that if you're going to make these throwaway comments in the arena of a young individual, whether it's a male or a female, because let's not dress this into a gender focus.
No, I can only speak about a female because I've only ever experienced being a woman, but I totally understand.
Yeah, what I'm getting at is that when we speak the comments like you've suggested, that whole process of the, you know, so and so down the road is X because of Y. Whether it's a boy or a girl, we've put that information into their mindset. They will grow with that seed developing inside their mind. That judgment on somebody based on those things will become part of their genetic makeup. And you cannot ever kind of get past that once they're into their teens. So whatever information we put into a young person in those first 14 years of their life is going to make up how they judge and look at the world after that point. And it takes a huge amount of work for that individual to reset it. And that's if they're doing the kind of the abusing, if you like. They're the ones they become the person making those negative comments. But if they're the person that is at the receiving end of that, because their body has developed into the very thing that in their early years they were being told, that's nasty. Don't want to be like that because they've got this, but you're beautiful. This whole confusion means that that young person is going to have to work, as you've experienced, a huge amount on rewiring all of that learning.
Yeah.
And that can be too late for too many.
Mm-hmm.
The impact that you've had from steroids, potential for major organ failure, hair loss,
Yeah.
kind of hormone imbalance.
Yeah.
What has that done emotionally? I know you said you avoid relationships, you avoid contact because of all of the emotional stuff around body dysmorphia, and totally understand that. But the impact of what your body has done as a result of those decisions, does that make you feel?
Oh, it's such a mess because initially I had these things to deal with, like, you know, not having slim legs, having chunky legs, having hips, not being a skinny little mini, you know, not having big boobs. Like, okay, I did something about that. But all the things that I had to deal with initially that I hated myself for, that maybe other people were experiencing too, not everybody, but lots of other people. And now I've got all these things like hair loss, like hirsutism, deep voice, things that other people don't understand, that nobody else is having to deal with, and people find weird. And so I've got,
On top of that, you have the external judgment of what what that backstory is without knowing.
exactly, yeah, without asking me, people have come up to me and said, "Oh, you're a fast swimmer because you used to be a man, we can't compete with you." Like, well, I didn't, and they don't even want to hear it.
Yeah, and it's that projection and that kind of misinformation that kind of forms in a lot of people. And I know that you've spent time with APA, and kind of the whole conversation around those impacts, and the transgender conversation is, for me, it's probably the most horrific thing to put onto somebody without any knowledge. It's it's a perception, judgment, an assumption.
So much so, yes. And I've had it in both ways, because I've had the mental health services basically tell me that I wouldn't be doing this to myself, what I was doing with the steroids, unless I was secretly transgender and trying to understand my gender. And I've had people, excuse me, sorry. Sorry, I've got heavy breath on me. I've had people from outside influences. I've even been attacked in the street. I've had the most terrifying thing that happened was a gang of youths ran after me. They wanted to chuck a bottle of alcohol over me and set fire to me, which was absolutely terrifying. So I feel I've got so much sympathy and empathy for anyone who is transgender. And I've said to people before, when they've said to me, I mean, are you transgender? I said, no, because transgender is a man trapped in a woman's body. I said, I feel like I'm an apple-shaped woman trapped in a pear-shaped body. So in a sense, I understand to a degree feeling like you're in completely the wrong body, and I've got the most support for the LGBT community, but at the same time, that's not my story. Yeah. And it can be really frustrating being told that it is. And also being called sir when I've got my wig on, my makeup, you know, my boobs that are, and people are so ignorant, you know, they'll still say sir. And you just think how hurtful that is, that I'm a woman, and how hurtful that must be for somebody who is a trans woman who's doing everything in their power to pass, and they're still getting that kind of ignorance from outsiders.
And again, that ignorance is something that will only ever pass through conversations, through the raising the awareness that actually you can take a look at somebody, but you do not know the backstory.
Entirely, yeah.
Even if you read the first page of a book, that doesn't tell you what the last page of the book is.
No.
And you know, it's not just don't judge a book by its cover. You know, it is a case of actually getting to a point of accepting human for human, and that acceptance has been taken away from us by so many for so long, because we've been given all of these boxes of identification that says you are this, therefore I treat you in response to you are this. Well, take the box away. Is this human?
And it's so often on aesthetic appearance as well. That even if, like, they'll just look at you, it's not even like they've got any information on you. You know, you had a report saying, oh, this is a paedophile. Well, okay, people might treat them in a certain way, but it's just basing on somebody's looks, whether somebody's fat, whether somebody's thin, whether somebody's gothic, whether somebody's got muscles, whether somebody is wearing makeup, whether they're not, whether they've had surgery, Botox, whether they haven't, and all this categorization just on the image, the way somebody looks, and it's such a shame because it's so superficial. And I think that was probably in my story, nobody was saying about the picture. People are still saying, help me get over my anorexia. Oh, well, look at her. At least you're not as fat as her. You've never been like her. You've never been fat. You're fine. And, you know, things that were triggering me to get worse.
So again, it's using that external point of reference to try and justify an internal turmoil. It doesn't work. It's never worked. It ain't ever going to work. You know, and professionals that do this, please take some time to get to know the reality. Please take the time to understand that if you are going to use an external point of reference for someone that's going through internal turmoil as some form of kind of target of reference, you are potentially re-traumatizing the individual that you are aiming to help with all good intentions. But we've got to understand and respond to the individual, not the wider community, and what is kind of the generic representation of body image, etc. I will pick up on the point of assumption. One of the things that often happens is people make the assumption that they know your backstory.
Yeah, very much so.
And the phrase to assume is to make an ass out of you and me.
Yeah.
Breakdown of the word. And being dyslexic, I love that. Make sure I know how to spell it. Ass, you, me. Fabulous. But to assume something is to keep it in here. As soon as it comes out of your mouth and you act on that assumption, you're not just the ass, you've proved yourself to be a fool. Because you are acting on something that you do not know for fact.
Yeah, and I would say one of the biggest misconceptions with body dysmorphic across the board, what anybody dysmorphic, whether they're taking steroids, whether they're having surgery, people think, why are they drawing all this attention to themselves? Why are they making themselves look like freaks? They want attention. And in our minds, we are deformed by nature, and we are trying to correct a deformity. So everything I was doing, and maybe I was making myself look like a freak with these great big muscular arms. It's not natural for a woman. That I've given myself facial hair and made myself go bald, and people are looking like, why is she doing all this? But in my mind, you know, the way that I was naturally, that I was so skinny on top, whether it was true or whether it was a misrepresentation by my dysmorphia or somewhere in between, but I was so skinny on top and so enormous on the bottom, and I was trying to correct that and trying to sort of normalize it and make myself look not like a freak, look acceptable, and everybody's looking at like, why is she trying to make herself look like a freak? And I think this happens so much within dysmorphic circles, and unless you've got any understanding of body dysmorphia, you don't understand this.
Yeah, and I think it's probably worthwhile because there will people that know my history, and they will be going, Dee, you really should have pointed out how much at risk of this you were. So I'll take people back till I was coming into my teenage years. I was 4 stone underweight.
Wow.
I was the smallest I probably could have been for my age at 12, 13, 14. And we didn't know why I was underweight. I wasn't anorexic. You know, there was no desire to change my weight. It was simply that what we discovered was I had a high metabolic rate. And some people go, wow, you're really lucky. You can eat what you want, don't put on weight. No. Going into high school, I was picked on because I was the easy target. I was small, was underweight, but I was also very fast for my age. I could run fast. And I was told, because of this imbalance, you need to go to the gym. I went to 4 gyms when I was 12. 3 gyms were quite happy to take my money, put me through weights, put me through muscle build programs, etc. 1 gym wasn't. That gym was owned by Dave Prowse. And for those who don't know, Dave Prowse was a bodybuilder. He was a UK champion bodybuilder. He was also the man who wore the suit for Darth Vader in the original Star Wars films. He understood body dysmorphia in the 80s in a way that most people don't even understand it now. He understood that at 12 years old, if I was to go through any of those programs, I would be risking my whole future. He sent me away, told me to come back in a year when my body had a chance to work out what it was going to do. At 13, Dave Prowse gave me a workout like nobody else. Not even the military give workouts like this. It was insane workout, but it was the workout to my capacity, not to go beyond my capacity. And Dave Prowse knew that if I carried on that path, and I carried on with this idea that I've got to get this 4 stone back, I've got to somehow get to where everyone else is saying, then I would be at risk. And I am forever grateful to the late Dave Prowse for not doing what every other gym owner wanted to do and just take the money, because I would have gone down a very different path if I'd got the adrenaline rush about working that weight on. So I totally understand how that pinpoint moment can have an impact.
Yeah, you're lucky you had.
When you've got the wrong information going in at that point, it's crucial that there is that support network that kind of balances it off. And when you don't have that, it can be a disaster.
You obviously had a professional that was really able to connect with you, that you really listened to, that you really respected. And it maybe takes a lot for that to form with a 12-year-old as well. So whatever he did, he must have something really special there.
All he did was take the time and not be money orientated.
Yeah.
In conversations that I had with Dave over the last kind of about 5 years before he died, that was very much his focus. Work with somebody without the drive for the financial gain that they can bring you.
Yeah.
And in the world of fitness, when you take that drive away from the gym owners, the instructors, the private PT instructors, you will find a professional that is looking after their client, not looking after their bank account. And it's something that stuck with me right the way through my career. It wasn't so much that he connected with me or spent any time talking to me. He knew his job, and his job was to try and make people fitter and healthier, not to pile on the bank account. And unfortunately, there are far too many gyms, there are far too many individuals in the fitness business that don't have that approach. There are a lot, and I'm not saying that this is something, this is a problem in the business, but there are far too many people that do not understand the psychological impact of overtraining, of overdriving that adrenaline, of overdriving that image, and that takes people on the path very similar to that you've experienced. If you could wave a magic wand and go back to any point in your history and make one change.
And it's not allowed to be physical.
Pardon?
It is not allowed to be physical.
If you can go back to a point where you made a decision about what you were going to do, when would you make a different decision?
Oh my God. I probably, I think I wouldn't have, it's so hard. I mean, I think what I would have needed was somebody to intervene probably before I became anorexic, before way that there just wasn't anybody around who would have been able to help me. There just wasn't, even, I think it's really hard when you have somebody, a young girl who hates her body so much that even saying like, well, you're going to get you could get kidney failure or a liver failure or a heart attack if you take these steroids, you could die if you get too underweight. Even saying that, when you think that your life is not worth living because of the body shape you've been given, it would just take somebody with a completely different outlook on what is beautiful, what is of value, what matters. And I think there aren't that many people. I mean, there are a lot of people within the therapeutic sector that I'm meeting through working with you, but there haven't been in my life. And also within the mental health sector, this sort of thing takes a lot of time, and you're only given a therapist for maybe like 6 to 12 sessions if you're lucky enough to get one on the NHS. So this is another thing that maybe needs to be addressed.
And this is something where when we look at the whole perception of how adults engage with young people, that psychological, that forensic psychological understanding is very rarely in play unless somebody has gone through something themselves or experienced it close hand to be able to say, actually, do you know what? I need to connect with that young person. And in numerous reports, psychological reports, mental health reports, the whole arena in education, the importance of that one adult that connects with a young person is so often the only critical moment. I was lucky in that I had a whole team of people in my teams that were those right people. But, and I'm very conscious that I was very lucky because of the experiences that I was going through. But the entire education arena, the entire awareness arena still hasn't got to that confidence of one person can make that difference, and being that one person can be all it takes. I'm reminded of the story of a fellow athlete, someone a lot faster than I was, somebody by the name of Chris Akabusi. Chris Akabusi, like me, was very fast at a very young age. He was raised outside of his own culture. He was raised outside of his own family or within his extended family, but outside of his home country. And it took one person to identify his talent and to nurture that and go beyond. And Chris Akabusi became a champion. Daley Thompson, exactly the same. One person that saw the talent and saw the true creativity that that individual had. Daley Thompson, champion. Fatima Whitbread, champion. One person. All of these people that benefited from one person in a sea of negative that could actually make a difference for those people. I am really, really proud of everything that you've achieved in the last year. I absolutely love everything that you've done for APA over the last few months. I am absolutely delighted to be able to have this conversation and be able to showcase that all of the journey that you've been through, that is not what defines you.
Okay.
What is defining you is your creativity. The very thing that when you were young was the one thing you wanted to nurture, was the one career path that you wanted, was that creativity, that kind of focus. And you've been through this horrendous roller coaster that sounds like it's been designed by, you know, an insane scientist. But you're now coming to the end of that roller coaster and are now going back to what was your first passion, and that creativity. And that's absolutely beautiful to see. And it's immensely inspiring to watch how that's formed over the last few months. What are you enjoying about life now?
It is. I mean, when you say about one person, I mean, I've got to say thank you so much to Bonnie and to yourself as well. She was the first person to believe in me. You know, I did sort of message a few people with businesses saying, look, I'm doing web design, I'm doing social media, I'm doing marketing. Is there anything I can do to help you out? And it's like, what, you know, I'm 36 and I haven't got it together yet. You know, a lot of people are like, oh, whatever, you know. And she gave me a chance. She said, this is what I'm doing, and I'm just learning so much on this journey. And the fact that it's making such a difference within mental health, and it's everything I've been through into mental health, and looking at what you're doing and how you're going about making changes, getting to meet people like Bernie Wright. It's been really amazing, and this is actually what's keeping me grounded, what's keeping my focus off. I mean, the body dysmorphia is always going to be there. There isn't a magic bullet that's going to take it away, not unless somebody shoots me in the head and blows my brain out. But it is like just keeping it on a low where I've got something else to focus on, because I always wanted, before my entire life was taken up with gym, then I always wanted to maybe work in media, maybe work for a magazine or something creative. And, you know, there wasn't any social media, there wasn't anything like that around at the time. But I feel like I'm able to do what I always was supposed to be doing.
Mhm.
in an arena
It's
where I
a long diversion, but it's good to have you back. and I think when we can look at the path that you were intent on, that creativity, you come back to that path.
yeah.
And the body dysmorphia, the coping strategies that you built because of the world that you were in at that time, that took you on a diversion. And I
Yeah.
am so glad that you have been able to find the path to that creative that is really where your heart is at. I applaud you for your bravery on speaking out on this, and I I can't say strongly enough to anyone who has passed judgment in error. They are the problem. It is not any of yours or anyone who is experiencing life through the lens that you were looking. It is never their burden or their shame to carry for the ignorance and weakness and fear. And ultimately, everything that you've experienced in that abusive environment is rooted in that individual's fear. Fear of what they don't know, fear of what they don't understand, fear that they are somehow at risk of something that they don't know. And fear is what drives abuse. So you carry no shame for their fear. And no one who is experiencing life now or in the past or into the future through the lens that you were exposed to by outside forces should be carrying that fear and that shame. That's theirs to carry. And for professionals, it's down to us to make sure that we are always holding that divide, that the fear and shame is with perpetrators that take abuse to those that are suffering their own internal turmoil. Candi, thank you so much. I'm going to wrap it up um, and say to absolutely everybody, if you have gained anything from this conversation, then you can get CPD validation by completing the CPD questionnaire that will be attached to this video. If you are a member, that is free. If you are not a member, why not? But you will only have to pay the administration cost for that CPD. So in essence, you're getting CPD just for administration charge. Until next time, take care, look after yourselves, look after each other, and hopefully I'll see you again on another conversation very, very soon. Andy, thank you.
Yeah.